Alright guys, this is how we're going to clean the carburetor on this Coleman mini bike. Don't mind the gas tank. If you want to know what that's all about, watch another video. But it is running rough, so we want to clean out this carburetor, see if there's any gunk in there. So we're going to unscrew the cover on this air filter, throw that wing nut somewhere, take off our filter, and there's two 10mm bolts on these threaded rods here. 10mm nuts, I should say. Make sure your levers are out of the way, and that should come out. Okay, so now we want to pinch off the fuel line because there's not a shut off at the tank or anything. So what I've done before is just wrap electrical tape around a small pair of channel locks, and then you can pinch it off.
Oh!
I whacked you. Then we can pull our fuel line off. Put that off to the side.
That's still got some stuff in it.
And then our carburetor, we can take off your linkage there. And this linkage is going to look different if you didn't remove your governor. But we want to save that somewhere. Take off your gasket here. And slide off your carburetor. Okay, so after we took off the carburetor, I'm just looking at this gasket here, and you can see there's clearly a hole there. Now if we look at the back side of this guy, where is that hole located? On this side. So someone has obviously been in this carburetor already. Let's gingerly take off this gasket. Okay. Now, do we still think that's the proper spot for the carburetor? That's how it was sitting on there. If we flip it over, oh, you know what? It's probably correct because there's a channel right here that runs over here, and if we flipped it, it would not be correct.
That would be terrible.
So, oh, I got it flipped around. So I do believe that is the correct position for that gasket. There. We feel good about that now. Okay, so at the workbench, I could put down a fresh piece of cardboard. Just in case. I mean, the workbench is always kind of dirty, so. Okay, what we got here? 10mm bolts.
Leaking oil.
Gasoline. Obviously, we still have gas in the bowl that's going to spill all over the place, but let's get a 10mm wrench. And so this one will be your drain. And this is the actual bolt that keeps your bowl on. Make sure you keep that gasket on that.
Ooh, that's so
That bowl is nice and clean on the bottom. Sometimes too, these gaskets that seat your bowl to the carb itself, if you get gas on it, once it's not sealed in its position, it will expand. All you got to do if that happens to you, let it dry out good and then go back to reassemble it, because it'll shrink back up into its proper size once you let it dry up. So okay, so main issue, a lot of times you see with carburetors, there'll be gunk in the bottom. If there's been water in the gasoline, there'll be rust. Make sure you clean that out all good. This one looks great.
Papa, is that made of gold?
Is that made of gold?
Yeah.
Okay, next thing we want to look at is we're going to take out the float and look at the needle valve that's under there. So to do that, do that, I'm going to get a needle nose and pull that pin out that float hinges on. Okay, so we're going to use the needle nose. Pull that guy out, and your float will come out with your needle valve, or your needle. And how that works is that float, when it fills up the bowl that we took off, when it fills this up with gas, it pivots this and pushes that and closes off the gas flow to keep filling up the carburetor. So the bowl's acting as like a mini fuel tank for your carburetor. So there's our choke lever.
That just came off.
Yeah, that's alright though. Okay, so at this point, there's really no more to disassemble. I mean, on this side we have a fuel shut off. Here's your fuel in. I mean, when we clean this out and spray it, I don't see why we need to spray anything down there because we know we're getting fuel. There's fuel in the bowl. So our main concern once we bust out the carb cleaner is shooting in the jets. Shooting in these jets here, there.
So you
On this side, shooting in there, and then from the bottom, shooting that jet up, and this one as well. So that's not your jet, that's your fuel from the bowl. But anyways, let's bust out the carb spray, put on some safety glasses, and spray this out. One thing I do want to show you guys. Normally, this main jet here, you can take this out with a flathead screwdriver, but I want to show you on this one, maybe it's going to be tough to see, but there is how that jet is made with that slotted head. See that? You can only turn it in, and once it's in, it's not coming out. It's like one of those tamper-proof jets, so that's the first time I've seen one of those. So obviously we're not going to take that out, but if you do, that will be a long bolt with holes in it. Well, bolt, but rod with holes in it. Make sure all those are clean. Hold it up to the light so you can see through it. I'm putting mine on. You put yours on. Okay. Carb cleaner. I don't have a favorite, and I'm not sponsored, so it doesn't matter. But the big deal is here, when you spray in a port, you want to try to find out where it's spraying out somewhere. So let's go with this one first. Yep. That one's good. Let's do the main jet. Yep, I can tell that one's shooting out. Do these ones. Yep, I can see that shooting out the other side. Let's do this one. Yep, that one's the main jet coming out there. So really, that's all the jets. You can take your time and clean off the top of it, get all the junk off. Get your wife's toothbrush. Caroline, I'm just kidding. This is my toothbrush. I brush with Brake Clean. That is a big old booger right there. Okay. Dry this off a little bit. The rest of it'll all evaporate pretty quick, but let's let that dry off. Air dry for a little bit, and then we'll slap it all together. Okay, so because we couldn't get the main jet out with it being tamper-proof, let's reassemble our float and our needle. Make sure your needle is clean. Needle and seat, and sometimes in the seat where this needle sits there'll be a small gasket. There wasn't one with this one, so sometimes they just machine it to the brass there. So I'm going to feed that in like so. Then we can feed our...
Do you need to feed engines?
Feed it is just a term.
Well, I know they drink gas, but do you need to feed them?
There we go. And a lot of times there's not a stop on these. You can push them out all the way. What keeps them in place is when that bowl sits in here. It can't slide out because it'll hit the walls. So when you let it dangle, see how that's at an angle? That's what you want. Because when that gas sits in this bowl and comes up, it's closing that float. See how that float moves up and down? Let's put our O-ring back in place. Make sure your O-ring is clean.
As well. Let's shrink back to its normal size.
Yep. Put that back on. Another thing to note is sometimes these bolts that go in the bottom of these carburetors will have jets in them. This one clearly does not. This is just a bolt that holds it on. So, but if that is your case, make sure you shoot that and clean that with your carb clean as well. Also, be aware of where you're putting this drain. We might have to adjust this. I don't remember where this was positioned, but you want that drain somewhere where you can access it once it's on the machine so you can drain it for winter. Okay, our choke lever, how that fell off on us, but good. All right, let's go put it back on the machine. All right, let's slide this back on. Again, make sure your gasket's good. This one's still good. If not, make sure you get a new one. They're pretty dang cheap. So as you do this, as you slide this on, you probably have to put your linkages together. Let me get in a better angle here. As you slide it on, a lot of times, if you slide your carburetor all the way on, you won't be able to get it right. So let's try it the other way. Let's put this linkage in here first.
Then there.
And then
That's better.
I know my hand was in the way the whole time, but the main point is get your linkages together. Okay. At this point, I want to make sure my fuel line is in the proper spot and seated on as well. These holes, or these needle nose, are very handy for this type of work. They're angled and they come in different sizes. This one is a gear wrench, but they are super handy. I know Harbor Freight sells them as well, so get you a pair. Not a sponsor. Let's make sure that clamp is down all the way. There, that's good. Okay, yep, you have that.
And it fell off again. That thing is really
Choke lever fell off, now that's back on. Alright, now this Honda clone engine has this huge thick gasket that goes on the outside. Now be mindful now, let's get you over here. Make sure you look at different ports on your carburetor. So look how that's set up. You want to make sure that matches so those ports are open. Okay, so let's put our air box holder back on, and be mindful of this hose. This is your breather hose. That's going to go into this hole on the valve cover. So let's guide this back on. Make sure our levers are in a good position to accept this. good. We can put our nuts back on. You saw me take these off with the impact, but for mounting stuff back on, especially if you're clamping on plastic and gaskets, I prefer using a wrench or a ratchet because you can have a feel for it. You just want to tighten those up enough to squeeze those gaskets and they make a seal. You don't need to give it a bunch of ugga-duggas. Alright. Then you replace your air filter. And same thing with this, there's a gasket on the bottom of the air filter. You're not trying to squish the daylights out of it, just get it enough to where you're making a seal. And there you go. That's how I clean a carburetor. Hey, if this video helped you out, hopefully it did. Consider leaving a like, consider subscribing. Thanks for hanging out in the shop. Okay, I didn't forget it, guys, in case you were wondering. My breather line, I'm going to shove back into the hole on the valve cover. Someone's going to say it. Someone's going to say, Mike, you forgot the breather hose. Well, I didn't. There you go.